Hello again, and thank you for joining us on the Providence College podcast. I'm Charlie Joyce, your host today, and I'm joined by our producer, Chris Judge, of the class of 2005. Our guest today is Rose Jones, Director of the Rhode Island Office of Healthy Aging. Rose earned a bachelor's degree in organizational communication from the Providence College School of Education in 2006, graduating summa cum laude. She also holds an MBA from Salve Regina University. She has more than 20 years experience in policy development and public affairs and has served in key leadership roles in Rhode Island Governor Gina Raimondo's administration. Welcome to the Providence College podcast, Rose.
Thank you for having me.
You've been the Office of Healthy Aging Director for a little over 15 months now, and I get the sense that you really jumped right in. And in fact, one of the first things you did was lobby to change the name of the office, which previously was known as the State Division of Elderly Affairs. Why was that a priority for you?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. There's so many reasons that I felt like this was really important, not the least of which is just to unite us all in a process that's undergoing again for all of us. We're all aging, right? There isn't a magical age at which you flip the switch and you begin to age. You stop growing up and you start to age. And there had been a very negative connotation around aging or the aging community. And we've heard descriptors like elderly and frail and vulnerable. And those descriptors certainly don't depict what is actually true for the third of our population in Rhode Island that is older, over 55 years of age, is our core constituency at the office, along with adults with living with disabilities, their caregivers and families. So we wanted to, unite us all in a process of aging. We also wanted to reflect that constituency. The Division of Elderly Affairs it wasn't, robust enough to really reflect the various voices and communities that we serve as an organization. And most importantly, we wanted to make sure that we are honoring in a very positive and wonderful way the continued contributions that people are making. I mean, even during COVID, we've seen so many people coming back from retirement to help us, whether they're healthcare folks or they're delivering meals or they're doing whatever the community needed during this time. People are continuing to contribute in wonderful ways in our society, and we want to continue to build that sense of pride in growing older. It is a privilege denied to many. It is something we all hope for, and we certainly hope to do it healthfully.
Excellent. And beyond the office title, and a wonderful explanation, by the way, it seems to me that you really have brought a fresh perspective to the office in the year plus since you've been there. What was your more broad vision when you arrived?
Yeah, so one of the first things that we did as an office, and again, thank you for saying that, I am certainly building on a very strong legacy of work and amazing leaders and team at the Office of Healthy Aging. Many of our previous directors and partners, continue to be engaged and continue to help shape our organization as we go forward. But one of the first things that we did when I came on was develop a strategic plan. And we based it on 5 pillars that would guide our work, and they continue to this day. This wasn't a plan that was meant to, sit on a shelf. We checked the box on it, if you will. It was truly meant to drive our work. So our 5 pillars are all around making sure that people have choice in their life. They feel connected to each other in the broader community, that we are always promoting equity and safety. And ultimately, that we are taking that peek under the hood to make sure that we are responsible stewards of the resources at our disposal. So that's the performance piece for us. So we established 14 focus areas under those pillars and 72 goals. And I'm really proud of the fact that just by numbers, we have 31 goals for the year 2020. We've completed 77% of them, and that's despite COVID. But certainly COVID has brought a good share of challenges, and as we return to more steady state operations, if you will, we're going to have to revisit those goals, look back at that plan as a team, and make adjustments as needed to really drive the work forward. But I'm certainly proud and heartened by the progress we've made so far.
Rose, who exactly is your target audience, or would that be audiences? And can you give us an idea of the extent of your office's operations and the resources available?
Yeah, absolutely. So our core constituency at the Office of Healthy Aging are older adults, and that is adults who are 55 years or older, adults living with disabilities, as well as families and caregivers. So it's a very broad constituency. I mean, older adults alone make up 1/3 of our population in Rhode Island. We're about, just over 1 million strong population-wide. About 325,000 or so are older adults. And by 2040, it's estimated that 1 in 4 residents will be 65 or older in Rhode Island. So we are certainly a community that is aging rapidly. And we want to make sure that people have all the supports that they need to age strong. I mean, if I had to put it in one sentence, that's what we're about. We're about empowering people to age strong. So whether that's community supports that folks need, from food, nutrition, to thinking about housing, to thinking about in-home supports, to thinking about health and wellness. We have a vast array of community programs that we offer. We also investigate, suspected abuse, self-neglect, financial exploitation of older adults, 60 years or older. So that's an important piece of what we do as well. And during this pandemic in particular, our work has taken on a heightened importance. And again, rooted in just ensuring that people who are most at risk of severe illness remain healthy and safe. And when you have statewide stay-at-home orders, and even now, as we make our way through reopening our economy, helping people meet their basic needs, again, housing, food, healthcare, access to information, and feel socially connected while physically distanced remain top priorities for us.
I want to return to COVID-19 in just a second, Rose. One of the things you mentioned early on is a very robust strategic plan that you have. So I wanted to ask you, to this point, in what areas do you feel the office has made progress?
Yeah, what I am most proud of, honestly, is our governing philosophy, if you will, is people policy practice, right? And what that means is that our policies, and certainly the practice in the field, should always be informed by lived experience and community voice. I'm very proud that our strategic plan reflects extensive community outreach. It was informed by the voices that we heard in the community. Same thing with our name change, which was part of that strategic plan and that vision for our path forward. That was informed by what we heard from folks out in the community. So what I am most proud of is that we have stood strong and really incorporated into our DNA, if you will, community voice and community engagement. And many of the initiatives that we have had the most success with have been driven in tight collaboration and partnership with folks engaged, whether they're advocates or there are constituents or they're providers out there who are helping us get the work done. I'm really proud of the level of engagement and making sure that that's baked into everything that we do, that we uplift community voice.
You referred a couple of minutes ago to COVID-19. Obviously, it's taken over all of our lives and those of everyone really around the world. It's extremely relevant, obviously, to your office and actually to you personally. And when I say that, Rose, I'm referring to the fact that Governor Raimondo called upon you to lead the state's quarantine and isolation team. Tell us about, if you would please, the charge and the makeup of the team, and what has the experience meant for you and your colleagues? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so first I would just like to start by, it was incredibly humbling when the governor asked me to take on this broader role. I felt absolutely compelled to do it. I've always felt committed to service and compelled to public service, but it was very humbling, and I was very proud to be in the seat to lead the team. And even as we begin to shift back now into, a new norm, if you will, a new normal, I'm continuing to remain engaged in the work. But as you mentioned, older adults being disproportionately impacted by COVID-19, my agency really sprang into action at the very first sign of the virus in our area. And personally, having been involved in so many emergency responses in my career and certainly in our state, I knew one of the very first things that we would have to do is ensure that our safety net was strong. So our ability to meet people's basic needs, food access, housing support, healthcare, as I mentioned, making sure that we had really strong systems there. So our agency at first became the point for statewide food access planning. And our strategy really turned on surging what we refer to as steady state programs. Those programs that are always in existence, but during a time of emergency, you might need a bit more, you might have to rely on. So programs like Meals on Wheels, for example. So we were focused on surging those programs. We were also focused on filling gaps in our local food system that would benefit us now as a state, but also in the long haul. So today, there's more than 27,000 meals or so that are delivered daily across the state, and that's thanks to an army of volunteers and organizations. Really, everyone stepped up to the plate during this time, from private industry to academia. You know, Providence College came forward in dining, URI, so many, and local municipalities and certainly a lot of nonprofit groups. The outpouring of support has been incredible. As you mentioned, I did also then take on that broader role of quarantine and isolation work. And that work was really steeped in making sure that everyone across the state, again, when you're on statewide stay-at-home orders, that in essence means everyone is on quarantine. So making sure that everyone had an opportunity to safely quarantine and do so as comfortably as possible really was our goal. And we brought together a really broad interagency team to do that work, as well as we developed systems for mutual aid and opportunities for folks to feel socially connected while physically distanced during the time. So, you know, this crisis is far from over, but certainly the governor and all of us on our leadership team and across state government are continuing to stay laser focused on ensuring that people have all of the supports that they need as we transition back. And again, there's a long tail on this. So we're starting to feel some sense of normalcy returning, but we have to remain vigilant and we have to continue to heed the guidance.
You know, to that end, currently, what advice on protection and behavior going forward would you give seniors these days?
Yeah. So first and foremost, just what I said, heed the guidance from the Rhode Island Department of Health. Tune into the governor's press briefings. We're learning more about this virus every day, so it is mission critical, so important to stay plugged in to reliable sources of information. Stay at home as much as you can. Avoid people who are sick. Wear your mask when you go out. Wash your hands often. These things matter. If you have symptoms or just call your primary care physician. If you need support or have general questions about resources that might be available to you during this time or again, as you move forward, call the Point Help Desk at 401-462-4444. This really just continues to be a challenging time for all of us. And I think it's really important to take care of yourself. Unplug when you can, go for a walk, read a book, practice yoga, rest, get good sleep. I know that's something that I'm reminding myself of every day. Unwinding is so important to physical and mental health, as is having a care plan should you get sick. So take the time to detail your medical information, any underlying conditions, medications, doctors, emergency contacts, that sort of thing, so that your loved ones have that handy if it's ever needed.
Excellent advice. Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that. You know, mental well-being, especially in these emotional times, is a huge element of the human condition, Rose. How much is your office's work focused on mental well-being? I'm sure right now, probably more than ever, but just in general, is that a big part of what you do and who you are?
Oh, absolutely. It is such a huge, huge element of what we do. There's a significant stigma, as so many of us know, around mental health, right? If we have a broken ankle, we've normalized that conversation. We can talk freely about our broken ankle and where we went for treatment and how it's healing. But when we're dealing with matters of feelings and emotions, not so much, right? We don't feel that that's okay to talk about in the same way. And one of the blessings of the burden of being in this time right now that I feel is that folks are starting to talk about it. And we're starting to change that, right? So it gives me hope that sooner or later we are going to erase the stigma around mental health. And we truly are going to elevate those conversations to be as normal and welcome as if we were talking about the broken ankle, right? So a lot of my work, certainly during this administration and even previously, was about making it okay to talk about mental health. And as far as our office goes, I mean, we've all now during this time of stay at home, we've had to come face to face with social isolation and the health effects of that and the effect on how we feel during that sort of time. It's really important that we continue to remember that for many folks, this doesn't go away when the economy opens up, right? There are many folks who continue to be homebound, who continue to be isolated, who continue to wrestle with feelings of loneliness and sadness. And we have to be there to support them. So that's where initiatives like Project Hello came from and other efforts that we've initiated with our partners in order to ensure that people feel connected to each other and to the broader community, not just during this time, but in the go forward, because there's folks who are, quarantined, isolated right now, and then there's folks who will continue to be, and we can't lose sight of that just because this pandemic at some point will come to a close.
As a follow-up, you've led the governor's statewide initiative that's known as Let's Talk Mental Health.
Yeah.
Explain that to us, Rose.
Yeah, sure. So again, I mentioned it was all about erasing the stigma, right? So in 2018, we kicked off the Let's Talk Mental Health initiative as a way to begin to start erasing that stigma and normalize conversation. So we held a series of community forums around the state, and we opened up ourselves as state leaders to sharing our own stories. And I think that was the magic of that particular initiative, which now has beautifully blossomed into the It's Okay to Not Be Okay initiative. But this was an opportunity for us to go out and for me to moderate, and I feel blessed as having that opportunity to go out and say, here's my story, here are my struggles. I'm just like you, we're all neighbors, and we're all in this together. That's the message, and we need to make this okay to talk about. And there were so many wonderful experiences I had in doing that. I'm not going to say it was easy. Obviously, it was a very emotional journey, but there were so many times where I had young people come up to me and say, well, I have a similar story to you, and because you said it, I stood up and felt like I could say it. And that's what we have to do, one by one. We have to send the message that it's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to talk about it.
Since graduating from the SE in 2006, you've worked in the areas of public service and public affairs and communications. Most of your work has been spent at state agencies in Rhode Island, including the Departments of Transportation and Environmental Management, as well as the Executive Office of Health and Human Services. How did your passion for public service develop, Rose?
Oh, goodness. Well, there are so many ways that I could answer that question, but I mean, my father was in public service, many members of my family in public service. I think that it's just core to who I am. But certainly when you just look at my life story, it's not dissimilar to many people's. I've traveled quite a winding road, and each path that I've gone down has certainly made me better, stronger, and more resilient. But I had a number of folks in my life, elders in my life who raised me, who gave me, really strong guidance when unfortunate things happened in life. And, I know it was written about by PC, and I feel so humbled that the story began to be shared in that way. But my godmother telling me at a very pivotal time in my life, you're not done. and you got to keep going and you got to keep serving. It's really been the thing that has guided me the most, certainly through Providence College and well beyond. I've worked in many roles, as you mentioned, in and out of government, though. The last 8 years or so have been in state service, but my 20 plus years are in and out of government, and they're all rooted in service. And it's reinforced in me that you can't be afraid to get personal and to serve. Servant leadership is the model of leadership that I ascribe to. And in fact, you have to get personal, right? If you're going to make any impact and truly serve people, you have to bring your whole and authentic self and lean in to learn about others, to serve others. So lived experience, including our own as a team, and honest conversation are at the heart of everything that we do at OHA. It's how we shape new policies, as I mentioned. It's how we make investments, and certainly how we've structured our response during this time. Because again, we're all neighbors, we're families, we're mothers, fathers, children. We're all worried about a strong economy, safe places to live and recreate, wholesome food, affordable health care, you name it. We're all worried about these things. And being in a position where I can help make things better for the greater community is not only important to me, I feel called to do it. And I think to a certain extent, we all are called to do that, to show up, to step in, to step up when our broader community needs us. So I feel very privileged and honored to be in this spot.
Wow, beautifully said. Thank you. And you know, in listening to you, it seems like you really have an affinity for working, particularly with the older population. Is there anything in your life in particular that has led you in this direction, Rose? Yeah,
definitely. As I mentioned, I was raised by my elders, you know, and they imparted tradition and knowledge and culture and values. They've literally guided my path and served as incredible mentors and role models and taught me the importance of lifting as you climb. Some of my greatest memories are with my dad and his fellow retirees at the coffee shop, and we'd share stories and life lessons, and I drink my coffee milk and eat my chocolate frosted donut. And it's such fascinating lives and perspectives, and it stuck with me. It really did. I feel incredibly honored, I can't say it enough, to now dedicate my time to elevating their contributions to our state and society, supporting them, and supporting folks as we all try to age strong. And I will say, just prior to becoming director of OHA, unfortunately, my mom passed. That experience I had with the system during her final weeks and days, it affected me very deeply and certainly informed my work and continues to inform, honestly, my work at OHA. As does, you know, having been a single mom, raising children while caring for an ailing parent, going to school at night while working full time, going from GED to MBA, public housing to home ownership. All of these things really have influenced me, but the number one thing that's influenced me is my mom, my May, my father, and their broad network of friends and all of the valuable lessons that they taught me. And I just want to continue to live in their legacy of service and do everything that I can to make things better in Rhode Island.
Rose, I tell you, it's been inspiring listening to you. It's a wonderful life story that you've shared with us, and yeah, thank you so much, for sharing your story and for doing the great work you're doing.
Oh, thank you again for having me on today. I appreciate it.
And thank you for being our guest, and thanks to you, our listeners, for joining us in the Providence College podcast. You can subscribe to the podcast in all the usual places: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, and YouTube. And thanks again to our producer, Chris Judge. I'm Charlie Joyce. Until next time.